Today, we're diving deep into the Constitution to look at America's oldest safeguards against government corruption. We're going to explore how these 18th century ideas got a major update in the 20th century, and then ask a really big question. Can they possibly survive the challenges of our digital age?
All right, let's kick things off with a word you probably don't hear much anymore, but it is absolutely central to this story: emolument. Now, for the founders, this meant way more than just a paycheck. It was a really broad term for any kind of profit, any benefit, or any advantage, period.
And the founders, guys like Benjamin Franklin, they were truly worried about this. They believed that when you mix the love of power with the love of money and government, you get a recipe for disaster, something that could completely poison the new republic they were trying so hard to build. So to fight this threat, they didn't write some 1,000-page rulebook. Nope. Instead, they forged a simple but really powerful shield right into the Constitution itself. They're called the Emoluments clauses, and they were designed to make sure the president couldn't be bought, bribed, or influenced. What's really interesting is that they built two of these shields. The first one, the Foreign Emoluments Clause, was all about blocking influence from other countries. But the second one, the Domestic Emoluments Clause, was actually even stricter. It just flat out banned the president from taking any extra profit or benefit from Congress or the states, no exceptions. And the whole point, as Alexander Hamilton put it, was to make sure the president's only loyalty was to the entire country, not to their own bank account. The thinking was, with a fixed salary and a ban on anything extra, the president would have, and I'm quoting Hamilton here, no pecuniary inducement to renounce or desert the independence the Constitution intended for them. And for almost 200 years, that simple shield was pretty much all we had. But then, a massive political scandal erupted that made it painfully obvious that this broad principle, all by itself, just wasn't going to cut it in the modern world. I mean, just look at this timeline. From 1787 all the way to 1978. That's a huge jump. It was the Watergate scandal that totally shocked the system and convinced Congress that the old way of doing things just wasn't enough. They needed a brand new, much more detailed system. So that's what they did. Congress passed the Ethics in Government Act, or EIGA. This was a really big deal. It was a law designed to shine a bright light on the finances of public officials, adding a whole new layer of armor on top of the founders' original shield. And to give you an idea of the scale of this thing, it's just massive. We're talking about a huge web of financial paperwork. Every single year, officials in the executive branch file almost 400,000 reports detailing their finances. This was a totally different approach to government ethics. You see, EIGA basically swapped the founders' simple rule, no other emolument, for a super detailed checklist. It created the Office of Government Ethics and made officials list everything: where their money comes from, who they owe money to, gifts they've gotten. The whole idea was to spot potential conflicts of interest before they became real problems. But of course, just as the system was adapting to those 20th century problems, a new, maybe even trickier challenge popped up. What do you do when the official paper trail isn't actually on paper anymore? How do you keep the receipts when they can be deleted with a single click? Well, the main tool for this is the Presidential Records Act. It's a pretty straightforward law. It just says the White House has to create and, this is the key part, preserve records that show what it's doing officially. This is how we hold the government accountable. But in the age of social media, trying to enforce this has become a total minefield. I mean, official statements are now made on platforms where they can vanish in a second. This completely changes what a record even is. So it all boils down to this fundamental question for our time. What actually counts as a presidential record when a message can just disappear? And if it is a record, how on earth do we make sure it gets saved for history and for accountability? And this really gets to the core of the problem. We've got an 18th century shield and a 20th century system trying to handle 21st century problems. And it turns out there are some pretty serious gaps in that armor. Okay, first there's this huge legal hurdle. For most of American history, nobody really needed to sue over these clauses. But when they finally did, the cases got thrown out. The courts have never actually decided who has the right to file a lawsuit in the first place. Is it a citizen, a business competitor, Congress? We just don't know. Second, what profit means has gotten way more complicated. The founders weren't picturing a president with a global hotel empire. So here's the question. If a foreign government pays fair market price for a bunch of hotel rooms, is that just a normal business deal? Or is it a corrupting emolument? The Constitution doesn't tell us. And third, technology has created all these new ways to cover your tracks. When government officials can use messaging apps that automatically delete conversations, it basically attacks the whole foundation of the Presidential Records Act, which is built on the simple idea that records can be saved.
You know, the old system worked for as long as it did because it pretty much ran on an honor code. Presidents just voluntarily did the right thing to avoid even the hint of a conflict. But as ethics experts at the Brennan Center for Justice have pointed out, that long-standing norm, well, it's starting to crumble.
So after all that, what's the big takeaway? Why should any of us care about a 230-year-old constitutional clause and some old ethics laws? Why does any of this matter right now?
It matters because the founders' deepest fear is completely timeless. The worry that a leader could use public power for their own private gain is as real today as it was in 1787. The goal was always to have a government that works for the public good, not for the personal profit of whoever is in charge.
The fundamental challenge we're facing is a mismatch. Our anti-corruption tools, that old constitutional shield, the 20th century disclosure laws, they were all designed for a totally different world. And now they're being tested by global business, by digital technology, and by new political attitudes in ways no one ever saw coming.
And that leaves us with this final, really critical question. Is the armor that was built for a different time strong enough to protect the integrity of our government today? That's the challenge that sits right at the very heart of accountability in the 21st century.